Welcome to the start of the Open Cup. Don't worry about it. Definitely not already in the quarterfinals. In the top left, it is Site Delta. It is Spirit. And in the bottom right, we do have HeRoMaRinE. Got some stuff still stuck from my actual ladder attempts. Should not go super well. But now we should be all Gucci. So TvT here. The rest of the quarterfinals are also underway. And they all are pretty interesting, actually. MaxPax versus Wayne, I think, is fun. A Laser versus Future, after Future defeated Rainer. Now, Rainer does play random in Open Cup, but still. And then apparently is up 1-0 versus a Laser right now. That's an excellent result for the North American. And then Clem versus Trigger, which I imagine Clem will win, but it's always nice to see how Trigger does versus Clem, since he continues to improve over and over. But now for us, we get the TvT. Started a little bit later, as I believe both of them took a little bit of a break, but now we're deep into it, I suppose. Factory expands for both players, so not too deep into it. Nothing super alarming happening. I do suspect that HeRoMaRinE will win, but honestly, his road to the finals, the semifinals, actually, lately have not been too easy. I mean, he actually has not made the finals of an Open Cup in quite some time because Clem and MaxPax have a, like, 8-week streak or something insane going on. So that's that. But then HeRoMaRinE also was, I think, taking a break for a little while. And then is just not putting as many hours into StarCraft 2. Perhaps he will start to up it a little bit, coming to a tournament like Atlanta or Katowice or something like that. But he pretty much only plays when he is streaming. I think he's been streaming a little bit less. So, you know, it's definitely not the top of his game like he was probably last year when it was still called the Big Gate Cup. Definitely now the Clem Cup. And not only has Clem gotten reliably better, I suppose, as opposed to, you know, kind of duking it out with HeRoMaRinE consistently last year, Spirit has also gotten reliably better. So, I mean, HeRoMaRinE still gets my vote just because it is what it is, I guess, historically. But, I don't know, Spirit probably should actually be getting my vote to win this particular match as of November 27, 2023. Spirit might be the better player. I'm actually checking the Ligulac right now to see if that's true or not. HeRoMaRinE did win last week, actually the regionals. Just barely, though, 3-2. And before that was Spirit, before that was HeRoMaRinE, before that was Spirit a few times. Spirit is now consistently better than HeRoMaRinE, but not so much so that it's a one-sided affair. And when it comes to the bigger matches, apparently, HeRoMaRinE can still pull it out. But anyway, Spirit's a little bit better overall. Let's see if it is, in fact, true here today as well. First bit of action really underway. The loss of the Reaper early didn't count. And HeRoMaRinE is going for a double Cyclone drop into more and more Cyclones. We saw Beyond do this last week in the North American Open Cup. I kind of hate it, but because I don't like the Cyclone. But as far as its effectiveness, I guess it's okay. It can... the Cyclone drop is, I think, whatever. Like, that can be somewhat effective, very effective, not effective, as long as you don't lose the whole damn thing. It's the follow-up Cyclones that can look either very hit or miss. Either they do win the game, or they look like they've lost the Cyclone player the game, although it is usually not that severe. 4 SCVs did go down to the double-pronged Terrace. The Reaper in the main base did help out with, I think, 1 kill. And now here's that follow-up attack that I was talking about. A lot of Cyclones entering upper ramp on Site Delta. Seems a little worse for the situation. And a tank already out, even after 2 Cyclones from Spirit and a Hellion. I mean, that factory has actually been working for quite some time. But that's where the interference matrix is going to come in. Almost perfectly timed. Unfortunately, showed his hand a little bit there with the 4 more seconds that he needed. Perhaps another map, it would have worked out absolutely perfectly. But even as you show your hand, is there very much that the opposing Terran player can do about it? Well, I do think the fact that they are able to micro immediately is already a big difference. So they're not looking at their main base while you attack them. but then rather they are also poised to go for their own interference matrix, which Spirit also got. So I think that is a big difference. The second tank was almost there as well, which would have added at least its normal DPS before sieging up. And with 2 tanks sieged up, there's really not a whole lot that Cyclones can do because they get 2-shot by tanks. So this is going to be a bit of a disaster here for HeRoMaRinE, who's not going to get any interference matrix off before almost all of the Cyclones get blasted apart. 3 of them go down. 2 of them are at 1 shot. Maybe one of them's at 1 shot. I'm not sure. But the point is that Spirit now has a hefty advantage. And, I mean, this is kind of what I was talking about. The Cyclones in this particular game, they look really stupid. But, you know, when Beyond did it versus Clem, I believe it was, it looked not great. But I really tried to emphasize how much that was on a razor-thin edge of actually, like, overwhelming Clem's army. And then Beyond was actually able to play out a okay TvT afterward. It wasn't actually the end of the game. But I don't know, this actually might be. HeRoMaRinE's lack of stable units here. The Ravens being the most stable, but they're energy-based. Basically, I'm saying he doesn't have a tank. And even then, he's going to need a couple more. Nice sipe. Nice sipe on 2 tanks of Spirit, actually. One with the Cyclone, one with the auto turrets. That is certainly a good way to start the defense as HeRoMaRinE continues to buy time for his own tank to pop out. 3rd CC under fire, but without stim. Looks like it will survive. It does get heavily injured, and that is a lot of minerals going back into a command center. Perhaps not a viable way to break through the natural now, but HeRoMaRinE has lost access to the 3rd, lost access to SCV's mining. Again, we'll have to probably repair that 3rd CC up a little bit more. And the actual breakouts, well, I guess it will be okay, but even then, if the auto turrets got slapped down, well, I guess he also has his own auto turrets. Yeah, definitely better for Spirit to back away into the tank that he has sieged up anyway, so that's definitely better. And as such, HeRoMaRinE will not be able to push this back and get an immediate counterattack, which it kind of feels that he needs to catch up on this 10 worker disadvantage. The army supply is going to have to do the work here, and HeRoMaRinE does have a larger army supply. One interference matrix takes out that last tank from Spirit. He has another one popping out probably just now. Indeed it is. That's the only tank for quite some time. Otherwise, we got 3 Ravens from Spirit. They're going to try and hold on with their own auto turrets, although I only see 2 on the front lines right now. It still is a considerable advantage when these Marines do not have combat shields, especially. The auto turrets, however, do dissipate. They are time-based, and unfortunately, that was kind of it. Where in the world is the 3rd Raven? That's a Viking right there. I guess the 3rd Raven was harassing and did get shot down without doing too much damage to the SCV line. Now it's Spirit's turn to be a 3rd CC in trouble. Same amount of damage being done, even more so at this point. 3 SCVs go down. SCV's not repairing the command center either. Definitely something they could do. So that shouldn't have gotten worrisome, but it kind of did. And now finally, everything will be pushed back. Vikings pop out to take care of the medevac, and HeRoMaRinE, I would say it done sufficient counter damage. Spirit probably aggressing too long with the double tank takedown. You know, you got the double tanks lost, and then he had a 3rd one that was rallying here. That's when he bullied the 3rd command center back, I believe. After he bullied that back, if he had left at that particular moment, he might have been able to escape back home with not just the tank in the middle of the map alive, but the other tank alive, I think. If I remember correctly, but I am still a little groggy, so maybe not. But the point is, even with 1 tank alive back at home to supplement his reinforcing tank that had just popped, that's a huge difference. There was so few units left for HeRoMaRinE's attack on the 3rd. Another tank shot might have done the trick. We'll never know. 10 Vikings, by the way, for Spirit, who has really taken a long time to transition over into a more marine-based focus. Only a single engineering bay actually is upgrading as well. So Spirit has really fallen back in the mid-game. I mean, more so than the counter damage. Feels like his entire mid-game, and not his entire mid-game, but going into the mid-game, kind of feels like he was going to have to slow go it anyway after a pretty interesting back and forth and a very clutch save on the natural, I would say, from HeRoMaRinE. He was in a lot of trouble. Spirit was going to have so few Marines and so under-upgraded as well that it would be hard for him to really get out on the map safely. Now, if he did, he'd have so many Vikings, his Raven still alive, and hopefully more tanks, but even that number's been cold, obviously. That I mean, he would have been good, but then actually get across the map, that would have been difficult. Well, this was not it for HeRoMaRinE. Thought he could bust up the natural, but that was not actually true. Now he's going to try and take advantage of the mispositioned units to head into the main base, but only 2 medevacs, 16 Marines. Actually not all that impressive, although they will snipe down a couple of key units. Oh no, just the Liberator. That one Raven will survive, maybe even get repaired up. And HeRoMaRiNE's split attack has actually ended in a bit of disaster. I guess one thing Spirit was A-okay doing was defending. Defender's advantage, especially when the army was split like that from HeRoMaRiNE, so that Spirit theoretically could take one half of the army fight at a time, which is exactly what he did, was exactly what Spirit needed. Combined with his Viking presence, he was sure to actually punish any attempt for HeRoMaRinE to over-aggress, and again, that's exactly what happened. It was pretty much exactly what Spirit needed. Now the game seems to be back in his hands, because there's one thing I was trying to get to before the action heated up was that, okay, maybe the start of the mid-game as you head into the Marine focus wasn't looking too great for Spirit, who was still under-upgraded, but now at least has a good number of Marines and a couple medevacs. He is going to have a stronger entry into that kind of late game where we're talking a lot more about being maxed out, not being able to really kill your opponent. And then it goes into the air war. Well, certainly Spirit is winning the air war, so still got to make sure that you're not out-positioned, which has unfortunately happened here. And without that Liberator, although one has come up, oh, and then Siege is the wrong direction. It was possible to break that, just hopefully for the planetary fall. And actually, HeRoMaRinE is the one that disengages first, perhaps worried about the presence of a Liberator very, very soon. Actually just repositions. Now Spirit also having to stim again. His medevacs were lower on that juice than HeRoMaRiNE's, but an anti-armor missile helps make up for the upgrade difference and then some. And this will be a cleanup on the side of Spirit as he also lands his Vikings, which at this point are injured, but still alive. 6 Vikings to 0, 4 tanks to 4 tanks. HeRoMaRiNE's constant aggression not netting him the victories that he was hoping for. Tactically, I think they were sound in certain ideal situations, but not getting the ideal situation, unfortunately, and turning really against him. So that Spirit's getting more and more to that position that I was trying to talk about, which is that if he does get across the map safely, he has enough tanks, not an incredible amount, but he has enough tanks and enough Vikings, as he loses one more, and a Liberator to really chokehold HeRoMaRinE. And that's something that HeRoMaRinE does have to keep in mind, and why he has to kind of keep the pressure up, and he also needs to find more ways to mobilize and get them around the map. As he does break down the rocks, Site Delta now has this northern portion to worry about. Spirit's on top of it, however. And HeRoMaRinE probably won't be breaking this, but he is applying that pressure that's going to slow down Spirit's ultimate attack. 2-2 for both parties at this point. The Spirit tries to jump on a couple of unsieged tanks. Doesn't really work out. Again, HeRoMaRinE has to be very wary about those Liberators. They're going to win the day. They're going to win the fight. But as long as he's keeping mobile, then the Liberators won't be sieged up. Maybe the tanks won't be either. And they are a little far away from protecting this third CC. Just that one that was initially protecting it is really the one that's helping out. Does get sniped, but it contributed a lot. And actually, with so few Marines left over and injured, the tanks will have to move from the Liberators, and it looks like HeRoMaRinE will not find any wiggle room on that fourth. Of course, back at home, by the way, HeRoMaRiNE's been on a fourth base as well. Continued with his upgrades on time. Oh, Liberator harassment. So he still has that 3-3 attack timing for like a full 90 seconds, actually. Once they're done, anyway. Which they are not quite yet, so these Marine battles will, in about 30 seconds, look a lot more one-sided, and that's where Spirit really has to rely on the tanks and positioning. That double center tower setup is going to really help out here. Liberator was cleaned up after killing 5 SCVs. HeRoMaRinE, however, down 16 workers, will eventually be up 16 army supply, right? So that's something to consider, although it's probably going to be in Marines. He did go for the 8 racks, and Spirit did go for the triple starport. Unsurprising, considering how this game has really gone from the get-go, I suppose. Even though Cyclones are factory units, they're mobile. They're supposed to be trying to catch your opponent off guard, and that's really been HeRoMaRiNE's gambit the entire time. Unfortunately for Spirit, his starports are in a vulnerable area, potentially, but not only that, they're providing even more of a choke that he has to filter through to actually take down this army. If he does, again, Liberator would help out. with the Liberators used offensively. Now we have an attack on the north side as well. HeRoMaRinE finally finding the success that he was missing for the first 15 minutes of this game, and that 3-3 is kicking in as well to tremendously help out the Marine battle. Fortunately for Spirit, a couple of tank shots actually help, and that +3 armor wasn't quite done until the very remnants of this battle. Spirit did, however, lose a 3rd CC, so that is something to consider. His 5th, however, is done, so he's going to turn that back over. Put it into an orbital probably again, because he does need the mules and the scans. And Spirit is now the one that has an army advantage as HeRoMaRinE tries to actually bust open this site to reclaim its position. He just loses more units. It seems to be the consistent problem of HeRoMaRinE, is that when it seems like he's maybe doing okay, he actually kind of stays a little too long, gets a little too aggressive. And then Spirit takes really efficient trades, even without these upgrades, which for Spirit still are not done. +3 attack going to finish in maybe 25 seconds here, and that's probably going to be, for this attack, maybe? No, too many tanks. So yeah, the upgrades are going to even up. And Marines will no longer be a big issue, and Spirit not only defended so well to take a 20 army supply lead, but also killed HeRoMaRinE's own 3rd. So tit for tat. Except that HeRoMaRinE did not have his own 5th go back to replace that 3rd. He instead just lifts his main. So HeRoMaRinE's going to have more minerals to mine from, but that's not a planetary quite yet, and he's being pressured. 3-3 is done for Spirit. However, this actual battle, not exactly ideal, or maybe it's ideal enough. It's good enough. It's not ideal. Spirit's Marines on the front lines did get blasted apart, but the reinforcing tanks and that Liberator being sieged up was the help right there. Going to take down the rest of HeRoMaRinE's army, and HeRoMaRinE knows that he's in trouble. 4 medevacs trying to head into the natural base, barely even get there before the Marines are on top of it, and it looks like Spirit, with a 60 army supply advantage, is going to take game number 1. It did feel like the majority of this game, like 70%, 75% of this game, was Spirit getting the better trades, being in the better position. There was a couple of worrying moments when his army supply was a little down, or his tank supply was a little down, and whether or not he could keep up with HeRoMaRinE's constant repositioning, but Spirit did have enough defense to get into more of that maxed out scenario, we should say, definitely not late game, to split apart his tanks, to get his Liberator, to just calmly defend every which way, and now finally getting his counterattack in after a super successful defense. That makes sense. Spirit is going to kind of outlast HeRoMaRinE's adrenaline rush of the 8 racks, and he will be winning this game. HeRoMaRinE does not want to admit defeat quite yet, knows that a base trade could still throw things for a loop, but getting more and more likely, actually, as Spirit didn't go for an orbital at his 3rd, he just went for a planetary. Wait, and then his orbital went to his 5th, actually, his main orbital. So he is only working on 2 orbitals, which, I mean, sometimes that lack of scan or lack of mules is a big deal, but I suppose he doesn't really need mules, and, well, scans might not be an issue. I feel like they might, they're not the biggest thing anymore, right? Like, he's clearly winning. He's clearly 50 supply up. So it's, yeah, okay. But sometimes that lack of orbital, it does really get to be a pain, and now he's only on 1 orbital. So if this game was a little bit closer, like a 20 armor supply difference instead of a 40 armor supply difference, I would be quite worried. And hey, HeRoMaRinE really is doing some things to make you sweat. Spirit's not quite able to take down this planetary. A Liberator on the SCVs would be the biggest thing right now. He doesn't have it. It looks like he is going to be able to take care of his main base finally. Lost some production, but overall, I was going to say Spirit's still, looking better, and that is still true, but then HeRoMaRinE jumps on top of tanks with his own tanks and Marines before Spirit noticed, and that was an effective trade if HeRoMaRinE wasn't so down in the dumps economically. Taking out that many tanks is usually worth quite a few Marine lives, but not if HeRoMaRinE can't actually pump out all 8 barracks at once, which he can't do on his current economy. So unfortunately, that was not good enough, although it was, again, very tactically sound to go for that base trade, try and defend back at home with your tanks. He just didn't have enough to do it. Didn't even know this, that Spirit not only was out-upgraded on the bio for so long, but also never get that +2 tank. Doesn't seem to affect him, though, as he is finally going to get the win here, 20 minutes in. Spirit with a 1-0 lead versus HeRoMaRinE. In the bottom left of Hecate, it is Spirit. In the bottom top right is HeRoMaRinE. HeRoMaRinE almost finding that one moment, that one weak point of the armor to actually win the game, despite kind of overall not really having a lot of things going well for him, but it didn't quite work out. That is the power of the 8 racks against the more stable, I suppose, 3-star port, or someone who obviously hasn't gotten to any additional production yet. Is that TvT is a lot of comeback potential. Tanks cover a wide area and are supplemented with some marine fodder. They can defend a lot, especially on 3 bases. You have enough economy to produce just enough to defend 3 bases and maybe defend a 4th if you start taking really efficient trades. We see that all the time, especially thanks to Maru. I'd say really perfecting that style of comeback, you know? And that really, I think, was a lot down to his insistence on building Vikings, when a few years ago, I would say that the automatic default, you know, kind of thing to do when you were behind was try and catch up. Was to make almost the same composition, to say like, okay, I can't afford Vikings, so I need to just kind of try and get as many tanks as possible. Obviously, that's always been TvT, but then also try and get some medevacs to heal up all these Marines that are dying. And then Maru was just like, well, what if I just have Viking control all the time and push away their medevacs and push away their, you know, Ravens if they have them or whatever it is. Anyway, that aside. But the one problem with that is that if you start taking slightly less efficient engagements, the opposing player 8-raxing, taking more map control, taking faster bases, getting faster upgrades, maybe depending on how the game was going, you know, they're going to overwhelm you, especially on some of the smaller maps that we have, which I'd say the last one was one of the smaller ones we have, which might have also messed up HeRoMaRiNE's Cyclone Raven push. It was 5 seconds too fast. So he got there, showed his hand, and then the interference matrix upgrade wasn't done. So it almost happened, because that's what it can do. It can find that one little weak point and then abuse it incessantly to win the game, even though overall it felt like it wasn't really getting a lot of headway, but it didn't. And that's what's really quite important, and what's a good sign for Spirit, who, I mean, if he had done so well against the openers and then still lost because he mishandled the dual-pronged attack, I mean, that's also kind of like a morale loss a little bit too, I feel like. That Spirit is eager to get some, I guess, faster gameplay going, as he did 2 racks, but on a very large map. HeRoMaRiNE did go for 1 racks expand, so that has put him in a little bit of a vulnerable position, but not vulnerable enough. If this was a proxy, this might have been different. However, it wasn't a proxy, so coming all the way across hasn't netted Spirit too many victories. In fact, I would say that HeRoMaRiNE certainly should get the advantage. What is that? No, that's not a 1 rack expand. That must have been a factory expand. I could have sworn I saw the command center in a second building, though. Maybe I'm just totally off times. But the orbital is done. And for Spirit, his orbital is going to finish up in 5 seconds right now. Oh, he's also going to go into a Marauder Marine mix-up, huh? I've been seeing a lot more of these starter Marauders, and initially it just looked like kind of a mistake, a misclick, and then more and more Terrans have been doing it. So I theorized, especially without Marauder Slow, which has been... Marauder Slow opener versus Terran has been like a Gumiho thing. And then there's also the Hellion Marauder drop, which not what we're talking about, but... Anyway, I've theorized that it's just like, it is something a little chonkier in the early game that, you know, Cyclones are a little more annoyed by, I suppose. Well, not by much if they don't have slow. Tanks are a little more annoyed by. It adds a little bit more health. Like, you don't really want to go Marine Marauder in TvT unless you're up against mech. But I can kind of see the appeal of an early game Marauder when the early game of TvT relies so heavily on mech units, that high technology style of play. One Marauder can be, I guess, effective, although not looking particularly effective in this defense, is that HeRoMaRiNE's Cyclone Marine drop has been a very effective damage dealer. 9 SCVs is far more than Spirit was actually supposed to give away. Far more. That's actually put him in quite a difficult position. So his opener was a little less efficient, but the SCV count was actually not very different. Spirit was probably going to even up on the SCV count. He was 1 ahead, and HeRoMaRiNE's orbital was faster. So there's that. But then he was going to go into this bio-focus play, which is fine, but kind of when it was at his weakness, because Marines don't have very big range, and one Cyclone doesn't reliably kill a medevac anymore, and yeah, HeRoMaRinE really dug into that weakness, didn't he? A 9 worker difference is pretty big this early on. And he's gonna find even more success as he grabs Spirit's Cyclone, taking away, again, a more reliable option to kill a medevac, although not as reliable as it used to be. And Marines almost did the job, but then they were distracted, so auto turrets in the main base get 3, 4, could even get 5 SCVs before it's all said and done. HeRoMaRinE not focus firing. Oh, it does get 5. Could have gotten a 6 or 7, I guess. That is an incredible amount of damage. Jesus. Spirit's in a lot of trouble. He really needs to get this counterattack going. Use his mobility to try and at least stall out the 3rd CC, which I think that is very possible, but he's going to need to stall out the 3rd CC for, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, something pretty crazy, and I just don't think that's possible. Stalling it out for 30 seconds, I think, is even what HeRoMaRinE is predicting, so that's why he's not grabbing his 3rd CC on location quite yet. He's just moving it closer. But anything longer than that, probably not. Spirit also just going to go possibly for a gamble. And that's exactly what he's doing. 3 medevacs straight into the main base. HeRoMaRinE kind of predicted this. He has units in the main, was building missile turrets, but then still might be a little out of position. That one tank helping out initially, but no longer. Second tank not going to be able to siege up for some time. Anti-armor missile, is great when the Marines actually stay and fight, but either they just ran through onto the SCVs. So that's definitely better. And now we might have a situation where this tank is actually vulnerable. Okay, so there's 3 tanks on the field. They're kind of covering every single one. 4 tanks now for HeRoMaRinE. I guess that is going to be it. But 3 medevacs escape with 2 medevacs full of cargo. 20 SCVs were killed in that blitz attack. And HeRoMaRinE was totally expecting it. He knew that something desperate had to happen. The slow-go game of trying to just delay the 3rd base would not have gotten enough damage done. And unfortunately, he was still out of position. And, it is tough to actually fully defend that particular drop. 3 medevacs potentially hitting any which way. You just don't have that many units in the early game. So, try as HeRoMaRinE might, he did not stop that from killing 20 SCVs. And that's really the kicker, is that if it had killed 10 to get some, evening up of the early game, that still would not have been enough for Spirit. But 20 might be enough to actually get him back into this game, especially if you could actually delay the 3rd CC, which he was trying to do, but is so far unsuccessful. In fact, might lose some of his own units. Great pickup right there. Good on siege timing, knowing the interference pitch was going to come in. Great pickup, a little distraction as well as double Liberator. Hit the natural of his opponent. 5 SCVs do go down, and Liberators will survive to either add into the main fight or come back for more harassment. They do go back for more harassment. That might be too many Marines, actually. Yeah, just enough Marines. So not the most worthwhile of second Liberator attacks, but still, more SCV damage done. Spirit still definitely in need of continuing to do damage because he's still ultimately behind on those upgrades, which is deja vu. I guess he was in the last game as well, but he doesn't have any of that advantage that he has. He doesn't have his own Ravens, doesn't have his own Viking control. He just has under-upgraded units and the same amount of units really as HeRoMaRinE too. 25 Marines to 26. That's, and they're going to be under upgraded. That's not going to work out, right? So it's still all about finding more damage, even though he seems to have found a tremendous amount happening later in the game. Always makes it a little less impactful. HeRoMaRinE still really with the advantage from the early game devastation of Spirit's natural and main base. And Spirit now also has to worry about dealing with something back at home. He knows that HeRoMaRinE now does have medevacs and obviously was trying to do this drop initially. He's back on it, so he's got a bunker, he's got a tank, he's got a supply block. That's a little unfortunate. Both of them supply blocked actually right now, but he does not know about this drop. Thank you, Wizard King, for the 2-month resub. 4th CC on the way for HeRoMaRinE. 4th CC on location for Spirit. When the hell did he get that up? And it's an orbital as well, continuing to take risks knowing that he is still behind in some way, and I think he might have gotten an opportunity to click on HeRoMaRinE's upgrades. I think he did, yeah. So he knows at least he's up behind on that. He might just know the game well enough to figure that that is the case. He also probably figures that as far as the army supply goes, he might even be behind because he didn't really trade out army on the drop that he did. It was mostly slaughtering those SCVs. And then also his opponent's economy was still kicking longer in the kind of early to mid game. So that production might have come down faster, and that's actually what has happened. 10 army supply advantage for HeRoMaRinE with the upgrades in about 30 seconds. Spirits, he figures he's still behind, so let's take risks. He's absolutely right, but that is a pretty big risk because that's going to continue on for the rest of the game, isn't it? It's not just 4th orbital for the point in which you have the map control and are scaring your opponent. It's a 4th orbital for when they find a good fight, for when it goes into the Viking Wars, if we get that long. But Spirit actually kind of nipping this particular push in the bud, just jumps on top of HeRoMaRiNE's partial army with almost all of his. That was a bit of luck as well, actually, having his units defending his 4th, knowing it was a vulnerable point, but then also these units off to the side being able to regroup. And HeRoMaRiNE will also, once again, choosing to split up his army. If he had sent his entire army all together, Vikings and Ravens included, that might not have been such an easy little nip right there. But Spirits is playing, once again, well defensively, as we find ourselves in a very similar scenario to last game, even though the way we got here was very different. But HeRoMaRiNE has that 40-second advantage on his upgrades. He's got the 8 racks going. I guess Spirit actually chose the 8 racks as well this game, but still trying to outposition. Spirit this time might be successful. Spirit coming in on the backside, not nearly as ideal. You're going up into your own choke. Spirit does have the other army that could be trying to back up this 3rd CC, but it's far too late. SCVs retreat, knowing they cannot save that 3rd orbital, and that is going to be it for Spirit's 3rd, but he does have a 5th floating on over now. He's looking for the counterattack. However, HeRoMaRiNE did grab a 4th base planetary, as one usually does, and this means this will at least take a longer time to actually kill. No SCV pull under repair, however, as HeRoMaRiNE is trying to actually bust up into the natural and main base without paying attention back at home. He loses his 4th. He kills Spirit's 6th. He's looking for the main base. He's looking for the production. He interferes Matrix, the tanks. Anti-armor missile still in effect as well. He scans the high ground and sees not much holding on. And HeRoMaRiNE will successfully bust into the production line. Certainly a killing blow, as Spirit is nowhere close to doing the same. And that is that. GG's. HeRoMaRiNE ties up the series 1-1. In the bottom right of hard lead now, we do have Spirit. In the top left, it is HeRoMaRiNE. And since we do have a game 3, I'll go ahead and make some bets. Actually a little mistimed, kind of spoiled the last game. Whoops. And HeRoMaRiNE did what he could not do in the first game, which was find a weak point. Spirit had moved out with his half of his army to get himself out of position to defend the 3rd, and did not have enough army to defend his natural or his main, which was really the kicker. You know, obviously if he defended his high grounds with 5 tanks, 20 Marines, whatever, then HeRoMaRiNE backs away. And it's actually tit for tat, because the 4th base planetary went down. The 6th base that Spirit was building would still be building, and his 5th would be turning into a planetary off to the right side, and Spirit actually might have even gotten ahead in that game economically. Upgrades are still a problem. But HeRoMaRiNE did know what he had to do, which was continue with the momentum, whether that was entering into the high grounds or entering into the main base. Both were still going to get him that little bit extra to actually put him in the lead. Getting to the high ground would have still canceled that 6th, would have still killed a lot more units, and would have potentially threatened at least the natural. So then when he realized he could actually go into the main base, that was probably even his own confirmation that he was going to win the game. 1-Rax Expand. I am looking at an appropriate time now to say definitively that it is a 1-Rax Expand. What about the last one? I guess because it was like 1-Rax Expand versus 2-Rax at Factory Expand. Timings didn't look right. But regardless, Spirit is looking not to take 9 and then 5 more SCVs worth of damage. A little 14 SCVs in the first like 6 minutes of the game. 9 of them in the first 5. That's game-ending damage most of the time. And he had the opportunity to make a comeback with the drop in the main base, and I'd say that he did. He made about 80% of a comeback happen with that drop. It was still only 80%. That's just how much damage HeRoMaRinE did so early on in the game that really makes the difference there. So even though it was more SCVs, it was at a later time after HeRoMaRinE already had minutes of his own safe mining to invest. But I really do think Spirit is on his way to almost the exact same game as last. Under upgraded, but still with some smart positioning. Could go ahead and, whoops, yeah, forgot to put Spirit's number up. And then would go ahead and maybe find his one moment to strike, which he was kind of looking for with his army attack on the left, but just found himself out of position. So we have Marines and, not Marines, Hellions and Reapers now into Marines. Spirit not going to go up to 5 Reaper, but rather 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion. He's up against a bunker, so it's probably not going to be a lot of damage. HeRoMaRinE playing a very greedy game, although he did SCV scout at the very least, as his opponent did 2 racks last game and probably looked and was like, oh shit, I could have proxy 2 racks. Definitely want to make sure that wasn't the case here. It was not. Spirit assuming that that would not have worked. It would have been right, I think. But now going for at least a little bit of a pressure build. A little bit. Actually fairly effective. He's still going to lose one of his Reapers. Actually lost 2 of his Reapers and did not kill the Hellions, so never mind. That was not effective. That was not. HeRoMaRinE, well placed with his units anyway, would not have let that snowball, regardless. But to not even lose his own Hellion is kind of a bummer there. Not that it'll add a lot in the future, but you never know. Spirit is going to go for an attack now with the tanks, so he still has some of his first units on the front lines, rallying 4 Marines across the map, and his medevac with the tank. Looks like HeRoMaRinE is very much suspicious of this potential maneuver. He doesn't know it's on the way, but might have been looking for it. He didn't see the army positioned there, so he let his Raven go across the map for some counterattack opportunity, and that's going to open up maybe some damage on HeRoMaRinE's base. The tank does take a rather odd position. I would say a lot of the times it is over here that it takes, but it wouldn't have actually hit very much. Purposeful building placement from Terrans, after all. But it actually hits the reactor, so it doesn't hit the barracks, but it's the reactor, and that's still pretty freaking good. And in fact, it's going to basically hit the barracks anyway. As Spirit realizes he has an opportunity to continue forward here, HeRoMaRinE is woefully low on units. Counterattack dealing 3 SCVs worth of damage might not make up for the damage that Spirit's going to find here as he kills some of the last units. Auto turret pops, and then, you know, he's going to be just run away from. And I actually think that Spirit's going to win this. I don't see enough for HeRoMaRinE. He's got 2 Marines and 2 Ravens, and the Ravens are out of juice. They're effectively useless. 3rd Raven pops up and now has an auto turret, but is that going to be enough? No? Okay, the other one did have an auto turret, my bad. So 2 auto turrets, not just 1, is enough to send the tank packing, but not enough to actually get the kill. The tank will get at least 1 more shot off. It will be on the SCVs. Auto turrets of Spirit also coming down to add further damage to the Marine count, and that is 12 SCVs in the first 6 minutes. Really getting some revenge for the last game, I would say. I really do believe HeRoMaRinE is actually checking for that. Like, his Raven movement was just odd enough. Oh, nice. Nice tank on the high ground. Kills that one Cyclone. Maybe even continues forward a little bit of a contain. But his Raven movement moved to the right and then to the left and then queued. Like, that I'm pretty sure of. I think he was actually checking to see if the army was waiting here. And Spirit just either predicted that or just coincidentally had moved his army back. The Marines weren't there maybe as fast as they, quote-unquote, should have been, something. Because it looked like HeRoMaRinE was looking for continued presence there. And said, oh, it's not here anymore, and then went with his Raven. And a Raven auto turret, or 2 auto turrets, whatever it was, in the first seconds of that might have been a big difference. I don't know if it would have stopped all the damage, but it probably would have been a big difference. And now HeRoMaRinE's in a lot of trouble. Down still 5 workers. No 3rd CC on the way as far as landing. He's not going to be able to get that down location where Spirit's already moving his on over. Contain, that is pretty nasty. Another Cyclone lost as well. HeRoMaRinE's biggest benefit is that he does still have 3 Ravens, which have been building up energy. So a lot of auto turrets are possible. But it would really just be auto turrets. I hardly count these 5 Marines as a fighting force. A couple of Vikings now as well, at the very least. Now it's going to make sure his Ravens survive, so that's certainly good. It's going to keep him alive for a little while longer, but Spirit certainly has the advantage. He could continue pushing this advantage. He could also fall back. Trying to gauge exactly when that would be an ideal timing. At this point, if he stays, and he is staying, he might win the battle and win the game, and it's no problem. Let's see. SCV's pulled into the mix, auto turrets from both sides, and that was nowhere close to winning, so never mind. I was gonna say, if HeRoMaRinE were to win that battle, a counterattack would be his only way of winning the entire game. An immediate counterattack, and he didn't even get that. He was just so far behind.